Good afternoon and welcome to my latest Patreon video. We are back on the amazing Smash Lord. I love this guy. He's really cool. It's coming together very well. You will notice I've put well, I've spilt a little bit of the black metal down the front, but that is Scalecolor black metal and Abaddon black. And what we're going to do is we're going to mix up a nice dark base tone for the black. I decided I wanted to make the metal on this one just a little bit darker. So we've put one drop of the black metal down there. We'll put 2 drops down, but we're going to put a fair amount of Abaddon black into it as well. I start off at about 1:1 and end up adding more black, so it ends up being about two parts Abaddon black to 1 part black metal. And this is just to kind of dull down this metal just even further. It really takes the gloss out of it. The more regular paint you put into metallic paints, the less gloss that first coat ends up being. And I like, when I'm doing true metallic metals, I do like having a very matte, kind of satin matte finish to the initial coat. It just means that the subsequent highlights then pop out a little bit more, so you can almost paint true metallics a little bit like you see non-metallics being painted, where you can do very strong highlights if you can knock down this gloss level to start with. So I think we're about there in terms of how much black we put in. As I say, I ended up being about oh no, one more drop. I ended up being about two parts Abaddon black to 1 part black metal, and I've gone back over some of my immortals as well, just to darken some of the metal over on there as well. You can turn this into a bit of a wash, so you can thin it down just a little bit, and then you can almost glaze it on just to darken some of the recesses, which you will see me doing now. So we did the highlights on the back of the cloak. So we're going to kind of almost blend those in a little bit and soften those in a little bit to make this a darker cloak. You need the contrast anyway when you're doing when you're doing OSL like that, as I said in the OSL video. So I just felt that the metal needed just to be that little bit darker. So all we're doing, you'll have noticed when I was mixing it as well that there was a blob of water next to the paint, and I did pull that into the paint. So this is a little bit thin. It just means it goes on a little bit easier. Metallics are notoriously difficult to get smooth sometimes. You end up pulling the paint and it drying in odd ways, and the metallic flecks don't tend to sit particularly right, which is why I like the black metal, the Scalecolor black metal, and the Model Air Chrome. Now these 2 paints, and in particular all the Scalecolor metallics, have a very fine grain. They have a fine grind to the metallic flecks that are in there. Which means that they don't tend to pull quite so much when you're putting them on with a paintbrush. But even so, we just add a little bit of water in there just to darken this down and allow it to go on smoothly. I'm using a size 1. It's an old size 1 Da Vinci brush. You do really want to kind of steer away from good quality brushes when you're using metallics. The flecks do kind of pull and push the bristles apart and around, and it just ends up being a little bit awkward. When you use metallic paints, also try not to have too much on the paintbrush. So you'll see I've got very little on the paintbrush. I'm taking a little bit of I'm just wiping a bit off there actually as well. Take a little bit from the edge of the wet palette, from that blob, and then pull it out in a way to really minimise how much is left on your paintbrush when you're doing it, and then that will help minimise the amount of metallic flecks which end up in the bristles as well. So we're just running over, doing as much of the kind of the basic stuff as we can, just running over and doing some Some very quick some glazing to darken all this down and get this satin black, metallic satin black kind of going in, and you'll see I'm pretty much staying away from all the OSL that we've put in before. I do glaze a little bit of it back. I kind of thin it down, thin this metallic down just a fraction, and glaze over it very, very slightly, just to introduce a little bit more of that metallic fleck. So there's a little bit of water to pull it out, just to thin this base tone down. And we can start glazing that in other places, and you'll see already that the brush is, even though I've been using very, very small amounts of paint, the brush is already starting to split. We're getting kind of stray hairs pulling out there and everything. So right, so we're going to go where I've kind of gone over all of that. The whole model is now done with that Abaddon black mix, and we're going to very, very quickly just make up an Abaddon black glaze. So there's absolutely a ton of water in here. This is about 6-7 parts water to 1 part paint, and we're going to use it pretty much like a glaze, and we've kind of wiped the brush off. Don't want it too wet, and this is just to accentuate the contrast in some of the areas where the light isn't going to really hit, and this is one of the ways where you can get the contrast to work for you with metallic paint like this. So if you can darken down all the recesses, it then allows you to highlight up a little bit better. I had one of my viewers the other day saying that little water drop on the ferrule was driving him mad. I must admit I don't tend to notice them, so apologies for that. So yeah, we're just running this into recesses to increase a little bit of contrast, and also just to blackline some of the. You can see it already, kind of making a bit of an effect to blackline some of the details in. It's a similar kind of principle as using Nuln Oil, but the Abaddon Black is a little bit more controllable, I think anyway. And we're not flooding it. We haven't got a lot on the paintbrush. You'll see that I've done pretty much the entire cloak there with one dip of the paintbrush. So we're just using it to wet and darken that area. The model's getting a little bit loose. I really should have pinned this model. This would have been a more sensible thing to do. So into all the shadows, we've got the shadow on the shoulder pad. The shoulder pads for Necrons are an absolute nightmare to get the lighting right on. I will do a video purely on the shoulder pads at some point. So this is now pure black metal. So we've done all the base tones and everything. So this is now pure black metal, and we're going to edge and really start bringing in the light direction. So the black metal can be used to start to bring these highlights up, and then the final highlight is going to be with Model Air Chrome. Now this is as I use paint on the brush, you can then see that you can then go back with a little bit of paint on the brush and kind of glaze over certain OSL bits just to add a little bit more of a metallic fleck to them. So for instance here we're going to start hitting all the top edges with the black metal, and you can see the difference already between the black metal and the tone that we mixed with the Abaddon black as well, and this really helps keep the metal nice and dark. I do like dark, kind of gritty metal. The other way you can get a dark satin finish on this is by putting the first layer of metallic down and then adding a weathering layer to it. So something like a brown or a very kind of oily black, rather than mixing into the initial tone. But I just find like mixing in is a little bit more controllable. It's a little bit quicker as well. So very, very small amounts of paint on the brush. You don't really want the metallics to blob. You want to be in complete control every time you put the paintbrush down. Now these under highlights, where the edges are facing down, they are like specular reflective highlights, so bouncing off the floor, that sort of stuff. And then the top edges, like these ones here, are going to get picked out with Model Air Chrome. So this is just a final tick, and then the same with those little edges, the bounce highlights, making sure that they get picked off as well. Making sure that you get both of them is important to kind of sell the. I know you were using metallic paint, but it's important to be able to sell the metallic feel of the panels that you're working on. So make sure that you're getting those kind of secondary bounce highlights in as well, like that little corner there. Just making sure that that is picked out, and keeping that contrast as well. So that's where the black glaze that we did last time, that's where that comes in, because the Model Air Chrome now stands out with good contrast against the Abaddon black from the glaze in the recesses, so you get that contrast between the two, and it really works. And again, as the paint is kind of wearing off the brush, you're able to be a little bit more precise and a little bit softer, so you can pull some softer transitions in as well. So when you've got fresh paint on the brush, you can go in and do these nice little edges, and then as it wears out a little bit, you can then soften it in to blend in a little bit more with the scale black, the black metal. So just hitting those tips. And you'll see me going between the black metal and the chrome quite a bit, just so that we can soften this down. So this is now black metal, and we're pulling that into the Model Air Chrome a little bit, just to soften that down. So these are large panels, so the transition between the bright highlight and the shadow is going to be a lot. It's going to be a lot softer. It's going to be a lot smoother and a lot slower than towards the end of the video. What we're going to do is we're going to work on to contrast against that, we're going to work on the hammer, and the hammer has got lots of very, very small parts, and the speed at which it goes from the very, very dark black metal mix that we made up to the chrome is going to be a lot quicker. So these panels, because they're nice and large, the transition between the light and the dark is going to be much smoother and much slower, which is why we're kind of going backwards and forwards between the three tones that we've got, and trying to pull those together nice and slowly. So whenever you see my paintbrush kind of nip off to the side like that, I'm grabbing a little bit of water. So the wet palette tends to have a few kind of water bubbles on the edge of it. So I've gone and grabbed a little bit of water to pull a black metal glaze over these bits here, just like I said before, just to introduce a little bit more of a metallic fleck to them. It's all well and good having the OSL on there, but it tends to look a little bit too much like paint if you get a little bit heavy with it. So I felt that those ones there were a little bit heavy, so I just glazed in a little bit of the metallic paint to help kind of sell that transition across, and make it look a little bit more like it was a little bit more like it was a glow rather than paint daubed onto the daubed onto the cloak. So it's important to be able to pay attention to where the highlights are landing on this. The easiest way to do it is because you are painting metallic and it is a metallic paint in itself. The easy way to do it is to hold the model in a orientation which you would like to paint it at, underneath a light, and then wherever that light is really showing the glare and the gloss level on the metallic, that's where we need to be picking out the highlights. Just beware when you are doing that. Just bear in mind the size of the panel that you are highlighting, because we're highlighting it to scale as opposed to in real life. So in real life, as you're looking at it here, the size of the highlights might be larger than than it would be in the universe that it's in, if that makes sense. So these panels on the back of this are, I don't know, maybe half a foot, so 6 inches, something like that, 15 centimeters, 6 inches long, whereas here on the model they are a few millimeters. So just bear that in mind, that you've got to paint them as if they are the correct scale to the model itself, rather than looking at how the highlights are hitting it. You can use the highlight. You can use how the light is hitting it as a guide, but then just make sure that you are either softening it out as much as you can if the panel is very large, or making the highlight a little bit quicker, as you'll see later on. But don't try to over highlight these, otherwise they end up it ends up looking a little bit flat, and exactly the thing that we're trying to get away from. And we're trying to keep the contrast up on here, which is why we did that black metal mix to start with. And you can see just as I was tipping it back there, you can see that contrast coming out, and the highlights really starting to show. Metallic paints is an interesting one to try to film, because it looks a lot harsher, because every single brush mark you can very much see, because it's catching light. But just occasionally when I'm standing it upright, you'll be able to see a little bit more of the contrast coming through. So just making sure, all I'm doing here is I'm just making sure that the areas where the glow is happening are, there we go. So that's how the contrast is kind of landing when I put it down like that. You can see where the highlights are being landed, and it's a little bit more obvious. Yeah, where I was doing there, I was just making sure that the brightest points of the OSL had the brightest amount of metallic fleck in it. So I was just, once I've rubbed a little bit of this Model Air chrome off the brush, then I can use the last little bit that's left on it. And it's not dry, it's not like I'm dry brushing, there's plenty of water still on the brush, so it's keeping it moist, keeping it damp, but I'm just making sure that once there's a little bit left on there, I can glaze over the brightest parts of the OSL to introduce a little bit of that Model Air chrome into the highlights. So these panels are obviously very much smaller than the main panels, so the highlights on these need to be very, very fine. You need to be making sure that you are just ticking the edges on these, and the same on the inside as well. So we're going to move on to the hammer, and the hammer here, at least I think we're going to do the hammer now. The hammer is going to have lots of very, very small details on it. So we've gone over, we've had the very, very kind of harsh black metal. Now look what happens when we just put a very, very simple tick just on the edge, very, very fine, very, very small, and we're just trying to catch just the very, very edge. So again, we haven't got very much paint on the brush, we don't want it blobbing, but because these are very small, the edges are very fine, and the actual part itself is very, very small, it's going to focus that light a lot, and it's going to have a very, very quick transition between the black and the chrome. So there's not really as much room to get like the transition of the three colours that we were doing on the back. There's not that much room, so we just go straight up to the chrome, and you can see how it works here. This is very, very simple and very quick. Accentuates those edges and sells the fact that it is metallic even more. Don't forget the bounce highlights underneath. They don't need to be as bright or as prominent, so you can just make sure that you're ticking the edges of those. And then there's also going to be a highlight running all the way down the side of these as well. So I'm going to drop that in a second, but you can almost see it there already. So at the base of these spikes, there's a section there that I'm just about to paint there. So that section there just needs a highlight running straight down the edge on both sides. So just like the ferrule on the paintbrush was going to have a highlight running right down the middle. So are those little bits there as well. So same on the other side, just straight down the centre there, just to highlight that that metallic feel on that. So all these edges are, like I said, they're very, very fine, very small. A very little bit of model air chrome will go a long way on these because it's the contrast between the very, very dark black, the black metal, and then this model air chrome. But you can see I've got very, very little paint on the brush, and you don't really need to go back to the wet palette that often, as long as the brush bristles are nice and damp, holding a little bit of water in there, which is another reason why I do like the Da Vinci's, because they have a larger body to them. Then you can really kind of go on and carry on painting for a fair while. And again, just this highlight that's running down the edge. You can see it. You can see the highlight there before I paint it, from where the light is hitting, and then we just kind of touch it with the chrome as well, just to highlight exactly where that highlight's going to be. Highlight, highlight, highlight. And then the same with the fingers. You can see where the highlights need to be on the fingers, and also on that forearm. You can see that highlight already on the forearm where it needs to be. And I add one there, one on the front, and then one gets added to the back as well as a secondary specular highlight, hitting the nice contrast low to high highlights on the fingertips. And it's just really paying attention and trying to find. I was very, very fat on that highlight there. That wasn't the best. But just take your time and go along and find every kind of upward facing surface, any circular surfaces that are running parallel to the ground, which we're going to need one of those highlights that run along it, like we were doing on the edge of the handle there. And then any edges which are facing upwards, you just tick, and we end up with it all looking like that. And the contrast really helps with this, especially because I'm trying to keep it nice and dark as well. So the smaller the part, the smaller the kind of the volume that you are highlighting, then the finer and the smaller that highlight is going to be. But just pay attention as I'm moving it around. Just look and see how the highlights kind of move. So true metallic and non-metallic. Everybody says that non-metallic is better, or you prefer metallic because of this or because of that. You still have to be able to pay attention to where you want the strongest light to be, because otherwise it's not going to have any lighting direction at all anyway. So if I was to highlight every single edge on these and every single light volume, it would just look too flat. So it still has to have a very definite light direction. So it's coming from the top. I'm making sure that you can see that highlight running all the way down that highlight running perpendicular to the hammer handle there. It's running all the way down the edge to accentuate that light direction. And the same with the pommel as well, and then underneath as well. So it's the underneath which will really help sell it as well. So the underneath is where all the kind of the bounce highlights are going to be. The reflective ones coming off the floor or whatever he's standing on. Maybe he's standing on a metal plate. So selling all those is going to really help. And there we go. So that's that's all the highlights for the hammer as well, and all the highlights on the back. Well, that was a very abrupt finish. Apologies for that. So yes, that's part 5 on the Necron Smash Lord. We're going to be finishing them off next video. Just going through and doing all the final highlights and everything. Thank you very much, guys, and I will see you next time. Stay safe and take care. Bye bye.